introducing new layers of complexity, new forms of conflict, new opportunities. For understanding, he encounters situations where power alone is not enough, where communication becomes necessary, where trust must be built, where cooperation creates outcomes that individual action cannot achieve. These experiences shape his understanding, further showing him that being a hero is not just about standing alone, it is also about knowing when to stand with others. This idea challenges his earlier instincts, because independence has always been his default response. But now, he must consider connection as part of his strength, rather than a risk. He navigates this carefully, allowing himself to rely on others in controlled ways, learning how to share responsibility without losing control of his own actions. This balance is not easy, because it requires constant awareness, constant adjustment, constant evaluation of what is needed in each moment. The narrative continues to build on this complexity, showing that the journey is not becoming simpler. It is becoming more layered, more nuanced, more reflective of a world where nothing exists in isolation. Billy continues to move forward within this environment, learning how to manage multiple aspects of his identity at the same time: his personal life, his role as a hero, his relationships, and the expectations that come with each. These elements do not always align perfectly. Sometimes they conflict, sometimes they create tension, sometimes they force him to make difficult choices. But each choice adds to his understanding, each outcome contributes to his growth, each experience shapes the person he is becoming. The story continues to explore the idea that identity is not fixed, it is something that evolves, something that changes with time, with experience, with perspective. He is no longer just a boy searching for belonging, he is becoming someone who creates belonging not only for himself, but for those around him. This shift changes how he sees the world, how he interacts with it, how he influences it, because influence now comes not just from power, but from presence, from the way he exists within his environment. The system of heroes and conflicts continues to evolve as well, introducing new dynamics, new challenges, new interactions that require him to adapt again and again. He does not resist this evolution. He accepts it as part of the journey, because resisting change only creates friction, while accepting it allows movement. This acceptance becomes another defining trait, not passive, but active, a willingness to engage with whatever comes next rather than trying to control what cannot be controlled. The narrative stretches further, showing that the journey is not moving toward a fixed destination, but expanding outward into more possibilities, more experiences, more opportunities for growth. Billy continues to learn how to navigate these possibilities, making decisions that are not always perfect, but are always intentional, because intention matters more than outcome in a world where outcomes cannot always be predicted. He understands now that being a hero is not about always succeeding, it is about continuing even when things do not go as planned, even when failure occurs, even when doubt appears. This persistence becomes his strength, not just his power, but his ability to keep moving forward, to keep learning, to keep adapting. The world continues to respond to his presence in different ways, some embracing it, some questioning it, some challenging it, but all acknowledging that something has changed. This change is not limited to him, it extends outward, affecting how others see themselves, how they respond to challenges, how they approach their own choices. The narrative continues to grow through this ripple effect, showing that one transformation can influence many others, creating a chain of development that extends far beyond its original point. Billy becomes part of that chain, not as the center of everything, but as a starting point for something that continues to expand. He does not try to control that expansion. He allows it to unfold naturally, guiding it when necessary, stepping back when needed, always aware of the balance between influence and control. This awareness continues to define his actions, shaping the way he approaches each new situation, each new challenge, each new moment. The story does not slow down, it continues to build layer upon layer, expanding deeper into the idea that growth is continuous, that change is constant, that understanding is never complete. And within this ongoing process, Billy continues to move forward, not searching for an end, but embracing the journey itself, because the journey is what defines him, not a single moment, not a single victory, but the continuous process of becoming, and that process never stops, it only evolves, just like him, just like the world around him, always moving, always changing, always continuing without end. The movement of the story keeps expanding beyond simple ideas of hero and villain, because the world he exists in does not allow such easy definitions. Everything is layered, everything is connected, everything carries meaning beyond what is immediately visible. Billy continues forward with a growing awareness that each action he takes does not exist alone. It creates reactions that move outward, touching people, situations, and outcomes that he may never directly see. This understanding changes the way he thinks about responsibility, because responsibility is no longer limited to what is in front of him. It extends into what might happen as a result of what he chooses to do. He begins to think in wider terms, not just about the present moment, but about the direction that moment creates, about how one decision can influence another, and how that influence can continue. Far beyond its origin, this shift in perspective marks another stage in his development, because it shows that he is no longer focused only on immediate results. He's beginning to consider long-term impact. The people around him continue to grow alongside him, not in the same way, but in ways that reflect their own experiences, their own challenges, their own understanding of what is happening. These parallel journeys add depth to the narrative, because they show that change is not isolated, it spreads, it influences, it creates movement in multiple directions. At once, Billy observes this movement, carefully recognizing that leadership is not about control, it is about example, it is about showing what is possible and allowing others to find their own way within that possibility. This realization reduces the need for him to act in every situation, because he understands that others can act as well, that they can contribute, that they can shape outcomes in their own way. This shared sense of purpose begins to form naturally, not as a structured system, but as a loose connection between individuals who are influenced by similar ideas, similar values, similar goals. The narrative continues to explore this concept, showing how influence can spread without force, without command, simply through presence, through action, through consistency. Billy becomes more consistent in everything he does, not perfect, reliable, not flawless, but steady, and this consistency becomes a form of strength that others can recognize and trust. The world continues to change, introducing new challenges that test not only his abilities, but his understanding of the role he plays within it. He faces situations where the right choice is not clear, where every option carries risk, where every decision has consequences that cannot be fully predicted. These moments force him to rely on judgment rather than certainty, because certainty rarely exists in complex situations. He learns to accept uncertainty not as a weakness, but as a natural part of the world, and this acceptance allows him to move forward without being paralyzed by doubt. The narrative deepens further into this idea, showing that growth is not about eliminating uncertainty, it is about learning to function within it. Billy continues to adapt to this reality, refining his ability to make decisions based on limited information, guided by his values, rather than guaranteed outcomes. This approach strengthens his character, because it shows that he is willing to act even when the result is not guaranteed, even when failure is possible. The system of power around him continues to evolve as well, introducing new dynamics, new structures, new forms of influence that require constant attention. He does not attempt to understand everything at once. He focuses on what is relevant, what is immediate, what can be influenced in the present moment, while remaining aware of the larger picture. This balance between focus and awareness allows him to operate effectively without becoming overwhelmed by the scale of what is happening. The narrative continues to stretch outward, showing how each element interacts with others, how no part exists in isolation, how everything contributes to the overall movement of the story. Billy remains a central part of this movement, not because he controls everything, but because he continues to engage with it, to influence it, to shape it in ways that align with his understanding of what is right. This alignment becomes his guiding principle, not rigid but flexible, not fixed, but adaptable, allowing him to respond to different situations in ways that remain true to his core values. The people around him continue to respond to his presence in different ways, some becoming more confident, some finding their own strength, some choosing to act in ways they would not have before. This ripple effect continues to expand, creating a network of influence that grows beyond direct interaction, extending into areas he may never personally reach. The narrative embraces this expansion, showing that the impact of one individual can extend far beyond what is immediately visible when it is rooted in consistency. Purpose. Billy continues to move forward within this expanding world, not seeking recognition, not expecting reward, but focused on the process of growth and the responsibility that comes with his abilities. He understands now that power is not something to be used lightly nor something to be feared. It is something to be managed, something to be guided, something that requires constant awareness. This understanding shapes every decision he makes, every action he takes. Every interaction he has. The story does not move toward an ending, because the journey itself is the focus. The continuous process of learning, adapting, and becoming. Billy remains within that process, evolving with each moment, growing with each experience, becoming something more than he was before without losing the core of who he is. This balance between change and identity defines his journey, because it shows that growth does not require losing oneself, it requires expanding what already exists. The world continues to shift around him, presenting new opportunities, new challenges, new paths that extend the narrative further and further. He continues to walk those paths with the same determination, the same willingness to learn, the same readiness to face whatever comes next, because there is always something next, always another step, always another choice, always another moment that defines who he is becoming, and he continues without Stopping without turning back, moving forward into the endless continuation of the story, the continuation of his journey begins to feel less like a sequence of events, and more like a constant state of becoming where each moment blends into the next, without clear separation between past, present, and future. Billy moves through this state, with increasing awareness that time itself is not something that can be controlled, but something that can be understood through how it shapes decisions and consequences. He begins to reflect more, not in a way that slows him down, but in a way that strengthens his ability to move forward with clarity, because reflection allows him to recognize patterns within himself as much as within the world around him. These internal patterns become just as important as external ones, because understanding his own responses allows him to refine them, to improve them, to make them more aligned with the direction he wants to move. This self-awareness adds another layer to his growth, transforming him from someone who reacts to someone who chooses his reactions deliberately. The narrative continues to expand through this idea, showing that true development comes not only from what happens around a person, but from how that person processes what happens. Billy processes everything carefully, not with hesitation, but with intention, because intention shapes action and action shapes outcome. He becomes more deliberate in his movements, more precise in his choices, more conscious of the impact he creates even in moments that seem small. These small moments accumulate, forming a larger picture that defines his role within the world, not as a fixed identity, but as an evolving presence. The world itself continues to evolve alongside him, presenting new challenges that require him to apply everything he has learned while also remaining open to learning more. He encounters situations where past experience provides guidance, but not complete answers, forcing him to adapt those lessons to fit new circumstances. This adaptability becomes essential, because no situation is ever exactly the same, even when it appears familiar, and relying too heavily on past solutions can create new problems. The narrative highlights this by showing how he navigates complexity without simplifying it, how he accepts that some problems do not have clear solutions and must be managed rather than solved. This shift from solving to managing reflects a deeper understanding of the world and his place within it, because not everything can be fixed, but everything can be influenced. Billy focuses on that influence, using his abilities, his awareness, and his presence to guide situations toward better outcomes, even when those outcomes are not perfect. The people around him continue to grow as well, influenced by his actions, by his consistency, by the way he approaches challenges without losing focus. This influence spreads quietly, not through commands, but through example, showing that leadership does not require authority, it requires authenticity. He becomes more authentic in everything he does, not trying to fit into an idea of what a hero should be, but defining that idea through his own actions. This authenticity resonates with others, creating connections that are based on trust, rather than expectation. Trust becomes a central element of the narrative, not as something given freely, but as something earned through repeated actions, through consistency, through reliability. Billy earns that trust over time, not perfectly, but steadily, and that steady progress creates a foundation that supports both him and those around him. The story continues to build on this foundation, expanding into new areas of conflict, new areas of cooperation, new areas of growth. Each new area adds depth, not just to the narrative, but to the understanding of what it means to exist within a world that is constantly changing. Billy remains engaged with that change, not resisting it, not trying to control it completely, but learning how to move within it effectively. This movement becomes smoother, more natural, as his experience grows, allowing him to respond to situations with greater confidence and clarity. He still faces uncertainty, still encounters challenges, still makes mistakes, but his ability to recover from those mistakes becomes stronger. Recovery becomes just as important as action, because no journey is without setbacks, and the ability to continue after failure defines long-term success. The narrative reflects this by showing that progress is not linear, it moves forward and backward at times, but overall it continues to develop. Billy accepts this non-linear progression, understanding that growth does not follow a straight path, and that setbacks are part of the process. This acceptance reduces frustration and allows him to focus on what matters, continuing to move forward regardless of temporary obstacles. The world around him continues to respond dynamically, sometimes aligning with his actions, sometimes opposing them, sometimes creating entirely new directions that he must consider. He navigates these responses with increasing skill, not trying to force outcomes, but guiding them where possible and adapting where necessary. This balance between guidance and adaptation becomes one of his defining strengths, because it allows him to remain effective in a wide range of situations. The narrative continues without pause, without a fixed endpoint, because it represents a process that does not conclude, a journey that continues as long as there are challenges to face and growth to achieve. Billy remains within that journey, fully present, fully engaged, Fully committed to understanding what it means to carry the power he has been given, he does not seek to finish the journey, because he understands that there is no final point, only continuous movement, only ongoing development. This understanding shapes his perspective, allowing him to approach each new moment with openness. Rather than expectation, he moves forward step by step. Moment by moment, decision by decision, always aware that each step contributes to the larger path. Even if that path cannot be fully seen, the story continues to unfold through this constant motion, expanding deeper into ideas of identity, responsibility, influence, and growth. And within this expansion, Billy continues to evolve not into something completely different, but into a more refined version of himself, a version that understands more, sees more, responds more effectively, while still holding on to the core of who he has always been. This balance between growth and identity remains at the heart of everything, guiding him through every challenge, every decision, every moment. And so the journey continues without pause, without conclusion, always moving forward, always expanding, always becoming something more. The path ahead does not reveal itself all at once, it unfolds piece by piece as he continues to move forward. Each moment bringing with it a new layer of understanding that adds to everything he has already learned. Billy begins to see that growth is not about reaching a higher point and staying there. It is about constant adjustment, constant awareness, constant willingness to evolve even when things seem stable. Stability itself becomes something he questions, not because it is wrong, but because it can create a false sense of completion, and completion is something that does not truly exist in a world that continues to change. He learns to remain alert even in calm moments, to observe even when nothing appears to be happening, because stillness often hides movement that is not immediately visible. This awareness allows him to detect shifts early, to respond before situations become unmanageable, to guide outcomes before they reach a point where control becomes difficult. The narrative continues to deepen through this perspective, showing that mastery is not about control over everything, but about understanding how everything connects and moves together. Billy does not try to control every element. He focuses on what he can influence, what he can guide, what he can adjust in ways that create positive direction. This selective focus allows him to maintain clarity even as complexity increases, because he is not overwhelmed by trying to do everything. He is concentrated on doing what matters most. The people around him continue to reflect this clarity in different ways, some finding their own paths, some strengthening their own sense of purpose, some discovering new aspects of themselves. Through the influence of what they have experienced, this shared growth becomes part of the larger story, showing that individual transformation can lead to collective change. When it spreads through action, through example, through consistency, Billy becomes more aware of this collective aspect. Understanding that his journey is not isolated, it is connected to the journeys of others in ways that are not always obvious, but are always present. He begins to consider how his actions affect not just immediate outcomes, but long-term developments, how decisions made in one moment can influence situations far into the future. This long-term thinking adds another dimension to his approach, because it requires patience, it requires trust in the process, it requires acceptance that results may not always be immediate. The narrative reflects this patience, allowing events to unfold gradually, building depth through time, rather than rushing toward resolution. Billy continues to refine his ability to wait when necessary, to act when appropriate, to recognize the difference between urgency and importance, because not everything that feels urgent is important, and not everything important appears urgent at first. This distinction becomes critical as the world around him grows more complex, presenting situations that demand quick thinking, but also careful consideration. He learns to balance these demands, using both instinct and analysis to navigate challenges effectively. The system of power and influence continues to evolve, introducing new elements that test his understanding in different ways. He encounters scenarios where direct action would create more problems than solutions, where subtlety becomes more effective than strength. These moments push him to expand his approach, to rely on observation, communication, and timing, rather than immediate force. The narrative continues to explore these variations, showing that strength takes many forms, and that true effectiveness comes from knowing which form to use in each situation. Billy adapts to this reality, becoming more versatile, more capable of responding to a wide range of challenges. Without losing his core identity, this versatility becomes one of his defining traits, allowing him to remain effective even as circumstances change. The world continues to shift around him, sometimes unpredictably, sometimes in ways that follow patterns he has learned to recognize. He uses this knowledge to anticipate changes, to prepare for possibilities, to remain ready for whatever direction the story takes next. The narrative stretches further, emphasizing that readiness is not about knowing everything in advance, but about being prepared to respond to whatever happens. Billy embodies this readiness moving forward with confidence, not because he has all the answers, but because he trusts his ability to find them. As situations unfold, this trust in himself grows stronger with each experience, reinforcing his sense of purpose, and his commitment to the path he is on. The people around him continue to respond to this confidence, drawing strength from it, finding their own courage through the example he sets. This creates a network of influence that continues to expand, reaching beyond immediate interactions and into the broader world. The story continues to build through this expansion, showing that impact is not limited by proximity. It extends through connection, through shared understanding, through the ripple effects of action. Billy remains aware of this expanding impact, using it carefully, ensuring that it contributes to balance rather than imbalance. This responsibility grows with time, but so does his ability to manage it, because growth brings capacity, and capacity allows for greater influence. The narrative continues without pause, without a final destination, because it represents a process that is ongoing, a journey that evolves continuously, without reaching a fixed endpoint. Billy remains within that process, fully engaged, fully aware, fully committed to becoming something more with each passing moment. He does not look for an end, he looks for direction. He does not seek completion, he seeks understanding. He does not expect resolution, he embraces continuation. This perspective defines his journey, shaping every decision, every action, every moment as he moves forward into the unknown. And the unknown does not intimidate him anymore, it challenges him, it motivates him, it gives him purpose, because purpose is not something that is found once, it is something that is developed over time, through experience, through reflection, through growth. Billy continues to develop that purpose step by step, moment by moment, always moving forward, always adapting, always learning. The story continues to unfold, endlessly expanding deeper into the nature of change, the nature of responsibility, the nature of becoming, and within that endless unfolding, he remains a constant, not fixed, but evolving. Not finished, but progressing, not complete, but continuing, always moving, always becoming something more. The movement carries forward without pause, as if the story itself has become a living process, rather than a sequence of events, something that breathes and expands with every passing moment. Billy feels this shift, not as something external, but as something internal, a sense that he is no longer just moving through the story, but becoming part of its structure, part of its flow, part of the ongoing change that defines everything around him. He begins to understand that his presence influences more than actions, it influences direction. It shapes outcomes, not always directly, but through the way it alters possibilities. This realization brings a deeper sense of awareness, because it means that every choice matters, not just for what it does now, but for what it allows to happen later. He starts to think in layers, seeing not just one outcome, but multiple possibilities branching from each decision, each one carrying its own path, its own consequences, its own effect on the larger world. This layered thinking does not slow him down, it refines him. It allows him to act with greater precision, with a clearer sense of purpose, because he is not just reacting, he is selecting the direction he wants to move toward. The narrative continues to grow through this perspective, showing how awareness transforms action, how understanding creates control, not over everything, but over what truly matters. Billy does not try to manage every possibility, he focuses on the ones that align with his values, with his sense of responsibility, with his understanding of balance. This selective awareness becomes his strength, because it prevents him from becoming overwhelmed, while still allowing him to influence outcomes in meaningful ways. The world continues to shift in response to countless variables, some influenced by him, some completely independent, creating a dynamic environment where nothing remains static. He navigates this environment with increasing ease, not because it becomes simpler, but because he becomes more capable of handling complexity. Complexity no longer feels like chaos, it feels like structure, one that can be understood, one that can be influenced, one that can be navigated with the right mindset. The people around him continue to evolve within this structure, each one adapting in their own way, each one responding to change based on their own perspective. Some grow stronger, some struggle, some find new direction, some lose their way, but all are part of the same movement, the same ongoing process that defines the world they share. Billy recognizes this interconnectedness and respects it. He does not try to force alignment, he allows space for variation, understanding that difference is part of growth. This respect for individuality strengthens the overall balance, because it prevents the system from becoming rigid, and rigidity often leads to collapse. The narrative deepens into this idea, showing that flexibility is essential for survival, for growth, for continuation. Billy embodies this flexibility, adapting not just his actions, but his thinking, his expectations, his understanding of what is possible. He learns to let go of fixed outcomes, to focus instead on direction, on movement, on the process itself. This shift allows him to remain effective, even when situations do not unfold as expected, because his success is not tied to a specific result, but to their ability to continue moving forward. the story continues to expand through this concept, showing that continuation itself is a form of success, a demonstration of resilience, of adaptability, of commitment. Billy continues to demonstrate this. Through his actions, through his decisions, through his presence within the world, he becomes a point of stability not because he stops change, but because he moves with it in a way that maintains balance. This role becomes clearer with time, not defined by titles or recognition, but by impact, by the way his presence shapes the flow of events. He does not seek acknowledgement, he focuses on effectiveness, on ensuring that his actions contribute to the larger objective. Maintaining a functional balance within an ever-changing environment, the system continues to test this balance, introducing new variables, new challenges, new uncertainties that require constant attention. He responds with the same steady approach, analyzing, adapting, acting, and then observing the results to refine his understanding. Further, this continuous cycle of learning and application becomes the foundation of his journey, a cycle that does not end, but evolves with each iteration. The narrative reflects this evolution, showing that growth is not a straight line, but a repeating process, one that builds on itself over time. Billy moves through this process with increasing confidence, not because he has reached a final state, but because he trusts the process itself. This trust allows him to act decisively, even in uncertain situations, because he knows that whatever the outcome, he will learn from it and adjust accordingly. The people around him continue to be influenced by this approach, some adopting similar mindsets, some finding inspiration in his consistency, some simply observing and learning in their own way. This spread of influence continues to expand the reach of the narrative, creating a network of change that grows beyond any single individual. Billy remains aware of this expansion, guiding it where necessary, allowing it to develop naturally, where possible, always maintaining the balance between influence and control. The story continues without interruption, without a defined conclusion, because it represents a reality that is ongoing, a process that continues as long as there is movement, as long as there is change. Billy remains within that reality, fully engaged, fully aware, fully committed to the journey. He does not look for an end. He looks for the next step, the next moment, the next opportunity to act in a way that aligns with his understanding. This forward focus keeps him grounded, keeps him moving, keeps him connected to the purpose that drives everything he does. And that purpose continues to evolve, continues to expand, continues to define the direction of his journey. Because purpose is not fixed, it grows, it adapts, it responds to experience and understanding. Billy continues to grow with it, becoming more aligned, more focused, more capable of navigating whatever comes next. The story moves forward with him, expanding endlessly into new possibilities, new challenges, new moments that shape the ongoing process of becoming. And within that endless expansion, he continues without pause, without hesitation, without end, always moving, always learning, always becoming something more. Emotion continues, as if the story itself refuses to settle into a final shape. It stretches forward, creating space for new thoughts, new experiences, new layers of understanding that build upon everything that has already happened. Billy feels this expansion, not as something distant, but as something immediate, something that exists within every decision he makes. Because each decision carries the potential to shape what comes next, he begins to recognize that the journey is no longer about discovering power or even learning how to use it. It has moved beyond that into something deeper, something more complex, something that requires a constant awareness of both self and surroundings. This awareness grows stronger with time, allowing him to sense shifts before they fully form, to understand tension before it becomes conflict, to recognize opportunity before it becomes obvious. He moves with this awareness, carefully, not rushing, not hesitating, but acting with a level of precision that comes from experience rather than instinct alone. The world around him continues to evolve, introducing new challenges that are not always physical. Sometimes they are emotional, sometimes they are intellectual, sometimes they exist only as choices that must be made without certainty. These challenges test him in different ways, forcing him to rely on more than just strength, forcing him to engage with ideas, with perspectives, with possibilities that do not have clear answers. The narrative deepens through these moments, showing that true growth comes from engaging with complexity rather than avoiding it. Billy does not avoid complexity. He steps into it willingly, accepting that understanding requires effort, requires patience, requires a willingness to see beyond simple explanations. This willingness becomes a defining trait, allowing him to navigate situations that others might find overwhelming. He does not simplify the world to make it easier. He learns to function within its complexity, making decisions that are informed by both logic and instinct. The balance between these two becomes more refined as he continues to grow, allowing him to act with both clarity and adaptability. The people around him continue to reflect this growth in different ways, some becoming more confident in their own abilities, some finding new purpose, some discovering strengths they did not know they had. This shared evolution adds depth to the story, showing that change is not isolated. It spreads, it influences, it creates movement in ways that extend beyond any single individual. Billy remains connected to this movement, not controlling it, but contributing to it, guiding it when necessary, allowing it to develop naturally. When possible, this balance between action and patience becomes more natural over time, allowing him to operate effectively without forcing outcomes. The narrative continues to expand, exploring new dimensions of what it means to carry responsibility, to influence outcomes, to exist within a system that is constantly shifting. Billy becomes more comfortable within this environment, not because it becomes easier, but because he becomes more capable of handling its challenges. He learns to accept uncertainty as part of the process, to trust in his ability to respond, rather than trying to predict everything in advance. This trust allows him to move forward with confidence, even when the path is not fully clear. The story continues to develop through this confidence, showing that strength is not just about power, it is about the ability to continue moving forward despite uncertainty. Billy embodies this strength not through perfection, but through persistence, through his willingness to keep learning, to keep adapting, to keep growing. The world around him continues to respond dynamically, sometimes aligning with his actions, sometimes challenging them, sometimes creating entirely new situations that require attention. He remains engaged with all of it, maintaining a steady presence that influences direction without dominating it. This presence becomes a stabilizing force within the narrative, not fixed, but consistent, not controlling, but guiding. The system continues to evolve, introducing new forms of complexity, new patterns of interaction, new opportunities for both growth and conflict. Billy adapts to these changes, continuously refining his approach, ensuring that he remains effective regardless of how the environment shifts. The narrative stretches further into this ongoing evolution, showing that the story is not confined to a single arc, but exists as a continuous process. Each moment leads to another, each decision creates new possibilities, each experience adds to the overall understanding of what it means to exist within this world. Billy remains at the center of this process, not because everything revolves around him, but because he continues to engage with it actively, consistently. Intentionally, he does not step away, he does not seek escape, he remains present, because presence is what allows him to influence what happens next. This commitment to presence defines his journey, shaping every action, every decision, every moment as he moves forward. The story continues without a final destination, without a defined conclusion, because it reflects a reality that is always in motion, always evolving, always expanding. Billy continues within that reality, growing with it, adapting to it, becoming something more with each passing moment. He does not reach a point of completion. He reaches a point of continuation, a state where growth itself becomes the purpose. And that purpose carries him forward through every challenge, through every change, through every new layer of understanding that the story reveals, because the story never truly ends, it continues, it expands, it evolves. And within that endless movement, he remains moving forward without pause, without end, always becoming something more.